Hey folks, BlackCross here, and welcome back to another video, guys. Today I wanted to talk a little bit in regards to directs. Now, obviously, we live in a weird time right now. We live in a time in which where we have entered in a transition in which where directs are now more of the main access in which where we're going to get video game information now, you know? I mean, we live in a digital age in which where social media has been very influential and stuff like that for people. But the video game industry has definitely felt a different tug as of right now. Very different, in fact. But it's more so of the fact that really these direct has been in response to how some of the organized corporations, for example, I'm referring to, of course, E3. There's been some drama that's been going on with E3 for the past couple of years, but recently in December, I believe it was December, E3 basically announced that there will be no more E3s at all. E3 is officially dead. It is officially dead. And that's it. We have no more E3, which is kind of a shock, really, when you think about it. We live in an age in which where E3 is no more. It's gone. It's kaput. It's finished. No more. And it's shocking. I didn't think that was ever going to happen. It was one of those things where it was like, yeah, E3 has become less and less eventful for some people, but there's still a lot of people who still look forward to E3. But it was one of those things where it just didn't make sense to me at the time that, you know, people were saying, oh, E3 will eventually be a thing of the past. It will be gone now that companies are now doing their own directs and stuff like that. Well, we no longer have a reason to have E3 and stuff. And especially when we have Summer Games Fest that goes on right now, and that's basically a digital direct type system anyway. So it was one of those things where it was like, yeah, I see where people are going with it, but I just don't see E3 being gone. And now that E3 has announced that there won't be an E3 anymore, I guess everyone was right. But ultimately, now directs are the main access. Everyone looks forward to these directs, and they can happen anytime they want to. If a company feels like they have a handful of games that they want to announce, they're gonna do it. You know, there's no hesitation, there's no guarantees. It's just, hey, we're gonna have a direct, and it's gonna happen literally within 2 days from now. And everyone's like, what? Two days? And then if you're like in Nintendo's case, people just leak out information before you even have a chance to announce the damn thing, you know? But it's just one of those things where it happens more Nintendo than anybody else I've noticed. Like, yeah, occasionally you'll have Sony or Microsoft that have like these leaks. But Nintendo, it feels like Nintendo's being verbally attacked by these leaks. And I don't know why, but it just seems to happen. But yeah, directs are a thing. And about a week ago, we had the State of Play, which is Sony's direct. And if it wasn't for the very end of the video, I would have told you that it was a so-so direct. You know, it has some good stuff, it has some stuff we already knew, but it has some new stuff regardless, so I couldn't really complain one way or another. It's just how it is. But then they decided to do something, and that really rubbed me the wrong way. And this is weird for me to say this, I'm really starting to hate directs. And you might be asking yourself, BlackCross, why would you hate these directs? These directs are awesome, they're cool, they're amazing. When they are used correctly. If they're not being used correctly, then what is remotely the point of having a direct to begin with? So rather than talk about the State of Play or talking about any direct that's going on right now, I'd rather just go ahead and make a concrete video basically talking about what I want out of a direct nowadays. What I want specifically in terms of direct presentation, you know? Because the bad thing is that these companies have a different mindset to how they should show off the directs, you know? They have a different ideal, they have a different opinions, and unfortunately those opinions don't resonate well with us players. You know, if you were to say, oh, well, this is basically what you call an investment's way of knowing details, but here's the thing, yes, investors are important for companies, but we're customers. We're very simple. So why do we need an in-depth of these directs and instead just show us what we want, which is the games, you know? So, without further ado, I want to give you a PowerPoint presentation of how I feel directs need to be handled for the future. And this is course covering for all companies, all game systems, regardless of the time frame. This is how I feel like you need to do your directs. Because if this is going to be a for now on thing, things need to change. And I'm hoping for the better. Because at this point, I'm getting sick and tired of watching these directs. Seriously, I have no joy of actually sitting through an entire 40-minute direct only to realize that I either A, have 1 or 2 games that I'm interested in, B, information that I already knew that I didn't need to know more of, or 3, potential projects that I don't even know what's going to happen. So first and foremost, let's talk about the frequency in which we should have directs. And that sounds weird, I know, right? It sounds weird, frequency in which we receive directs. Well, here's the thing, in a time frame in which where companies take longer and longer to develop games, there's not going to be as fluctuation of game titles that's going to be showcased on a monthly basis. So really, I feel like instead of getting one every month, which is ludicrously stupid, I don't know why people feel like we need to have a direct every month. In my opinion, we should really have upwards to at least 3 per year. And that sounds like a very merciful strategy when you think about it, you know? You have winter to spring, where it's basically like literally the new year, you know, new sales year and everything like that, somewhere within February or March or something like that, in which where you basically talk about games that are going on within the upcoming spring year or at least towards summer. Then you have the summer main one, which is basically what we would call the E3 event, now Summer's Game Fest, essentially Christmas for gamers, you know? Summertime is literally the perfect time to reveal the majority of your titles and stuff like that, and even future titles depending on the company and everything like that. So naturally, they would still do these future releases and stuff like that, and really, that time is the perfect time to do that. So why not just go ahead and do that, you know, just have a summer presentation where everyone knows what's going on. And then if you feel like you need to, you can have like a fall to winter direct in which where you showcase either the rest of the year or the up and coming next year, you know, depending on the strategy and depending on the outcome and stuff like that. But while the frequency may very well be very well presentation based on how I say it, it also depends on the number of games that you have. You know, you need to have that balance. And especially how you do your directs. You know, your directs should be very direct, where it should be aimed at towards the audience, showcasing what you're selling, which is basically the games. So naturally, here's how I feel like you need to do that part. The presentation just needs to be correlated into 2 sections. First section is where basically you have the majority of the new titles that's being showcased, you know, and they need to do one job and one job only, and that is to show us visually what the game is, both in terms of the story and the gameplay, and be very brief about it. You know, if you want to do like a whole 5-minute presentation on the game itself, 5 minutes should be plenty, I feel like, you know? 2 minutes if you feel like you're able to, but 5 minutes should be the maximum. If you go 10 minutes, you're already going to be losing audiences enough as it is, you know? They should be brief, they should be momentarily, and they should be direct, basically what it should be. The story presentation, relatively quick and easy to understand, and then the gameplay. Quick to understand, in-depth, but mostly dazzling to the eyes. If the gameplay is captivating and interesting to the audience, then chances are their main focus is going to be on the gameplay. Because if the gameplay is interesting enough, they're going to watch it, you know. We don't need 10 minutes, because after 10 minutes, eventually they're going to want to either A, fast forward through that clip, or B, move on to another clip until that particular segment is over. So 5 minutes, I feel like, is a maximum presentation, really at most. Preferably 2 minutes if you're able to, but 5 minutes, I feel like, is enough. And then the second half of the presentation should be to showcase what upcoming games are coming out. You know, say for example, you've already announced a title that was supposed to be coming out later on that year or something like that. Say for example, let's say for example, in that fall and winter presentation, you announced a game that was going to be coming out next year, and then in winter to spring, you have another direct. Instead of doing another presentation about that same title you talked about last direct, instead just do like a small brief trailer of showing upcoming titles that are guaranteed to come out in the next 6 months. I feel like that is a better way to do it. You know, you're not boring the audience. You've already showed us what this game is. And instead of spending another 5-10 minutes describing the game trying to sell us this title, instead you should just mostly remind us of being like, hey, here's this game that we just talked about. It's coming out literally in the next couple of months. And everyone's like, oh yeah, that's right, it is coming out in the next couple of months. You know, I feel like that's a lot more faster paced, and you're not wasting people's time on projects that you've already talked about, you know? Show less and let us see more. That sounds counterproductive, but you get what I'm saying, you know? Spend less time talking about it and just show us what we want to see, which is obviously to see the gameplay and a quick reminder of when stuff's going to be coming out and stuff. Especially even if it's like a smaller project that really isn't meant to be a big deal to talk about. Like, say for example, you know how Nintendo has its virtual consoles. I was about to say, I forgot what they're called, but virtual consoles. You know, every once in a while they'll showcase a game title and stuff like that that's going to be appearance in the virtual console. Have a little small segment in which where it showcases all of that. And really, Sony needs to be on top of that, especially considering that it has its PlayStation Plus subscription and everything like that. They're fairly slowly putting stuff on there, but here's the thing, we don't know about them. We don't know anything about what's being put on the PlayStation Plus right now. We don't even know what's being added on into the classic library. While people are talking about Nintendo's virtual console, Sony needs to jump on this and actually talk about their classic titles that's going to be put on there. You know, I'm actually being serious here. You know, there's a lot of retro players out there that still love the classic of the PlayStation titles. Heck, the majority of my collection right here is PlayStation 2. So naturally, I love to go back and play through some of the older titles. But the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if you actually tell me what you're going to be putting on there. And Sony hasn't done that at all. You can even keep that record track. Every single state of play that we've had, they have never, ever done a segment in which where they're talking about what's being added onto the PlayStation Plus. Never have they done that. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity that they have not invested that much in. You know, they have a product and they're not even remotely trying to sell it. They're selling everything else, but they're not selling that. Most importantly though, the main thing should be to talk about projects that you are going to be making in the near future. You know, we're not talking like, 2-3 years in the future. We should be talking about games that are going to be relatively important to us within the next following year. You know, if you got a project that's being in development, that's one thing, but you actually have to show us it. And that, to me, is where I get the most annoyed at, is whenever you have a project that you're working on and you don't really have much of anything to show. And there are two instances in which where I can actually say for sure that this has happened. Two relatively recent things. A couple of years ago at E3, Bethesda teased Elder Scrolls 6. And here's the thing, we didn't get much of anything at all. All we saw was like a small clip of some distant landscape and stuff like that, and a title. We didn't even see gameplay. We didn't even see a story. We just said, hey, here's a small little clip that we decided to put together that took us like 30 minutes to put together, and we're going to announce that we're working on Elder Scrolls 6. And it's like, to me, I feel like that is a waste of time. Yes, if there's like a special event or something like that, maybe you might want to. But if you're going to be literally pushing it for like 2-3 years of development, you're kind of wasting your time and you're wasting your breath announcing such a title, I'm getting tired of waiting for these anticipated titles, because the longer a title has for me to wait, the worse it's probably going to be later on. Expectation is key, and expectation, if it builds up over time, can hurt a product, I feel like, And you have to be careful with stuff like that. You have to be careful with expectations. And yes, that is technically partially our fault as players, but it's also the company's main fault for originally showcasing these things anyway. But another example, and this is the one that really irritated me the most. You know what I'm talking about, and for those that don't know, allow me to show you real quickly as to what they did.
新しいオリジナルの IP になります。新世代のアクションエスピオナージゲームです。
And basically, he was talking about this up-and-coming title that he's going to be working on after Death Stranding 2 gets released. And basically, it's a action... What is it now?
A new action espionage game by Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, whatever that is. And it's like, can we see visual? Oh, you're not gonna show us. You're not gonna show us any game whatsoever. How can you call yourself a developer if you have nothing to show? Seriously, what is the point of even remotely talking about something if it's not even remotely even in production? That's basically saying, oh, we're working on making a product, and you literally just started it literally yesterday. Like, you didn't start it like a week ago, you didn't start it a month ago, you started yesterday. And you said, hey, this is a project that we're working on. And you have nothing to show. I know there are some fans out there that says, oh, but he'll eventually have something to show. That's not the problem. The problem is that they're basically relying on their hardcore fan base to be excited about something without actually having anything on screen. And that, to me, is slightly annoying. It's the same way if Nomura and Square Enix did this for Kingdom Hearts. I mean, heck, they did show us something, and if they had stopped at the first, like, 10-second mark in which where they show Sora waking up on the couch, and that was it, I'd be pretty mad too, but they did showcase a little bit more, thankfully. At least an ideal concept of what the gameplay was going to be like and stuff like that. Record that's literally been almost 2 years now. Yeah, that's been 2 years now, and while I'm still holding hype for 4, it's not that strong, so yeah. What I'm saying is true. You have to be careful when you remotely reveal these things. You know, if you reveal them too soon, the hype level isn't going to be as strong as you originally announced it. You know, if you have something to announce, make certain it's at least within a year's time, and that way people will still be able to stay on board with being excited. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of players out there who's in the same boat with me, where they've had titles that's been announced a couple years ago, and their hype level have died down since then. They have already felt the burn multiple times, and they're practically done. I'm talking about, of course, older audiences. The younger audiences will still feel that enthusiasm, but us older audiences are actually getting tired of this now. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you have something to show, you better have something to show. It's one of those things where, as of right now, we are in this very revolutionary age in which where video game news is being broadcast to us. As of right now, they're being broadcast at a larger rate and more frequently than it ever has been before. And really, I feel like now, as main companies and everything like that, they need to refine how they showcase their titles, how they actually showcase their games and stuff. And really, the way I feel it should be the way that I've described it. And really, that is the main thing that should be done. It's basically, like I said, 3 times a year, 2 times if you don't have that many, but 3 times at most. And if you're going to do it, the first part of it should showcase games and titles that hasn't been revealed to us yet. And then the second half should be mostly reminders of titles that are going to be coming out in the next potential 6 months or something like that. And make certain that you actually have something to show and not just tell us what you're working on. Because to me, personally, that is very annoying. It's one of those things, if you don't show us actual game and actual story and actual footage from the development itself, then what's the point in showing us anything or even remotely talking about it at all? Especially since there's nothing on screen. So, yeah, those are all my overall opinions about what I feel like Duress should be done, especially considering the recent PlayStation State of Play that we've had. It's kind of sad, and if I have to rate things as it is, Nintendo's probably doing better than any of the 2 companies have done. You know, it's one of those things where Nintendo does better with their directs, yes, they are just as guilty as doing some of the stuff that I have mentioned before, like re-talking about titles that they have already mentioned before since their last direct, potentially dropping information that they haven't got anything of, and waiting until the next direct to show us something. And what's even worse is whenever they have a direct showcasing one title and one title only. Like I said, keep it 5 minutes at most. Why do you need a full as 20 minutes to showcase a single game that either A, I have no interest in, or B, someone actually does have interest in it and they're gonna buy it anyway? You don't need to waste time putting together this single direct. There's no need. You either have a guaranteed purchase or you don't have one. And either way, you've wasted your time making a solitary direct. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that's like, oh, well, what about the most recent Final Fantasy VII Rebirth direct? Like I said, if you're already hyped for that game and you're already planning on purchasing it, you don't need another direct. You're wasting too much money and time on making another direct that people have already gotten enough information on. They don't need that much more information on something that they're already guaranteed to purchase. And Final Fantasy VII is one of those properties that's going to guarantee sales. Okay? If you don't believe me, allow me to refresh your memory of back in time when Final Fantasy VII Remake first released. And this was Sony exclusive. This was before it was released on PC. Those numbers should tell you exactly what I'm talking about. You don't need to do a solo direct on something that people either already have the answers to or are just waiting until the game comes out. They don't need any more details, and that gets annoying. It gets old real quickly. But I've already complained enough as it is. So guys, let me know in the comments below. How do you feel about what I feel? Do you feel the same way that I am about these directs? Do you feel like there needs to be a major change and major rule sets in regards to these directs? Or do you feel like that I'm partially wrong? You know what? I'm willing to admit that I am wrong. I mean, I don't own any of these companies. I am just a gamer. And as a gamer, I want just one thing. And that's games. And every single time people are always talking about, oh, I can't wait for the new direct. This is why I'm excited for the direct. And you know what my number one thing that I'm always excited for whenever I hear a direct? My number one thing is anything new. Anything that hasn't been talked about, anything that isn't remotely mentioned, anything that either eye catches me and I didn't know was being made in the process. Those are basically what I'm looking forward to, you know? If you've already talked about a project and I've already seen it, either A, I'm interested in it, or B, I'm not interested in it. And I'm getting tired of keeping up with those things. So instead of that, I'm just more or less waiting to see what new stuff is coming out and I'm actually interested in it, you know? So, at any rate, those guys, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Catch you guys later.